Hello, and welcome to today's Quick Plays video on value 3-betting preflop. A good value 3-betting strategy allows us to build pots with strong hands and increase our profit both preflop and postflop. In this video we'll discuss when a 3-bet is for value, look at some examples, and talk about details like sizing. So what is a preflop value 3-bet? This is when a player raises preflop, we 3-bet them, and we will be ahead of the range they would continue with. The heavy emphasis being that we are ahead of the range they would continue with, either by calling our 3-bet or 4-betting themselves. Just because our hand is ahead of their open raising range does not mean the 3-bet will be for value. Rather than bore you with definitions and theory, let's jump right into two examples that will highlight this valuable play. In this first example, early position opens to 3, and we 3-bet next to act with aces. Just to make sure we're all on the same page with the nomenclature, a 3-bet is the first re-raise preflop. So early position raised, and we re-raised, also known as a 3-bet. Hero is certainly making a value 3-bet here. If we think about the range of hands early position would give our 3-bet action with, aces is going to be ahead. Even if early position only continued with exactly kings plus, this is a value 3-bet since aces is a 77-23 favorite. In the real world, we expect most opponents are going to give action with more hands than just kings plus, and thus our 3-bet becomes more and more valuable. This 3-bet is very standard. It's not to say that villain will always continue though. When he folds, we'll win some money preflop, and when he calls or 4-bets, the pot is getting built when we have a huge card edge. These are all good things for our bottom line. One last thing to note here is the size. As a default, a 3-bet size is usually between 3 to 4x the original raise. So early position raised to 3, and our 3-bet should be between 9 and 12. If villain is a thinking player, our bluff and value 3-bet sizes would be similar, so he can never distinguish our hand strength based upon the size we choose. Against a bad player though, we can consider making a value 3-bet a little bit larger, since a bad player doesn't look at the math or our range before giving action. Rather, a bad player is solely focused on the absolute strength of their own hole cards. The concept of value 3-betting is very simple to visualize with aces, since it's the best starting hand you can be dealt and always ahead of your opponent's continuing range. But as your pair gets weaker, or your strong Broadway hands get weaker, the notion of a value 3-bet can get murky. Take this example. In this hand, early position 2 opens to 350, and it folds to us on the button with queens. Some players would look at this spot and just say, well, queens is ahead of the range he opened, so we can 3-bet for value. But as we know from the definition of a value 3-bet, that is not a complete thought process. It's assumed that queens is ahead of villain's opening range, but is queens ahead of the range that villain would give a 3-bet action with? Let's assume for a moment that villain is a super nit, and if we 3-bet he would only continue with kings plus. Well, we know queens is a huge dog against kings plus, so a 3-bet here would not be for value. We're obviously not going to fold queens here, and if a 3-bet isn't for value, then our best option would just be to call the 350. This keeps his entire range intact, and we'll use our skills to beat him postflop. Even if villain would only continue against our 3-bet with queens plus ace king, we're on the bad side of a 60-40 and the 3-bet would not be for value. So when villain only continues against our 3-bet with a very strong range of hands, it means two things. 1. It's very tough to value 3-bet hands like queens, jacks, and ace king, and 2. It's very easy to bluff 3-bet them since they fold so much preflop. On the contrary, if villain would continue against our 3-bet with many worse hands, then our 3-bet shifts back towards value. If villain would continue with hands like ace, queen, tens, or worse, then our queens gain a nice card edge against their continuing range. Remember, the 3-bet is only for value if our hand beats the range they would continue with. If they wouldn't continue with the range that we beat, then our 3-bet is closer to a semi-bluff. That is value 3-betting in a nutshell. Think about the range of hands villain would call and or 4-bet with, how your hand performs against that, and whether your 3-bet is actually for value. It's not to say that you should never flat an open raise with aces, nor that you can't 3-bet and turn ace-queen into a semi-bluff. Just knowing what a value 3-bet is helps you understand what your preflop aggression is accomplishing. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, good luck and happy grinding.